You know, I'm not the type of guy who's into pop idols, but Liino is not only the cutest of them all, but more importantly, her buffs are pretty insane, now allowing characters like Arcane to dish out Omega ultimates with ease, while others like Feng Yi are just finally happy to have a dedicated support. And so, in this video, let me show you how to build and use Liino in the best way possible. Quick disclaimer, footage shown here is from an early access server, so final content is subject to change. Anyway, so let's start by looking at Liino's kit, and then move on to her build and teams next. First, we have the basic attacks. Honestly, I think they're really cool, especially that missile barrage she shoots out, but sadly, she ends up almost never using her basic attacks, and that's because of her battle skill. You see, when you cast her battle skill, she will initially deal a bit of electric damage, and enters a vocalist stance. While the stance is active, she cannot perform any basic attacks, and will instead follow the active character around the battlefield and grant 10% attack boost for everyone. And she also provides healing every 3 seconds, which scales with her agility stat. Interestingly enough, she also performs a special additional attack every 10 seconds. Although first hit is done within 3 seconds after casting the skill, but the damage overall is laughable. It's just there for moral support, I guess. Oh, and yeah, most importantly, this battle skill only costs 25 SP. Extremely cheap, and on top of that, it lasts for 60 seconds. So literally you'll cast it only a few times during even the longest of battles. Lastly, her first passive grants teammates inside the vocalist stance plus 20% treatment received, and damage taken is reduced by 20%. And this also persists for up to 3 seconds after leaving the stance area. Anyway, you can also end this stance if needed by just pressing her battle skill again. Alright, next we have the combo. It gets triggered while Vocalist stance is active and an art's reaction is consumed or applied at an enemy. Pretty simple combo. For example, in Feng Yi teams, you will usually see it pop up right after Perlica's combo when she applies electrification, and also when Feng Yi consumes electrification with her battle skill. Now, this combo deals some damage to the enemy and heals the active unit, while at the same time, Liino will gain additional 20 energy for her ultimate. And this will be her main source of energy for the ultimate. Yet again, healing scales with agility. On top of that, her second passive makes it so that after her combo is triggered, the next battle skill casted by Electric or Nature Operator will return 10 SP. This is pretty decent, although keep in mind when SP is returned, that means the unit gains less energy due to how the game is programmed. This doesn't affect things too much, but it's good to know that instead of usual 6.5 energy, only 5.85 will be gained. Okay, finally, we have the ultimate. When casted, she will perform a big heal on the team, deal some AoE damage, and forcibly apply electrification after a few seconds. Most important of all, she will enter a new stance called Cosmo Voice Stance, which will replace her battle skill stance if it was active previously. But yeah, this ultimate stance provides the team with electric and nature amp, as well as an attack boost. The attack boost remains the same 10% no matter what the level ultimate is, while the amp is based on how much will stat Liino has. For example, the team gains 0.04% amp, or basically every 100 will points grants 4% amp. You can check out this table with some of the gear loadouts, which I will talk about in a moment. Overall, it seems like while the maximum possible amp can be 60%, I believe this is only achievable if you have her signature fully refined, and she is also P5. Which is a bit of a bummer, but maybe in the future there will be ways to boost her will stat. Still, this ultimate is the main way to boost nature and electric teams, and it has a 15-second duration, so a pretty decent duration when you're trying to maximize the efficiency of her rotations. One thing to note, this ultimate stance also periodically heals and deals damage to enemies, and when it finally ends, the healing and damage will be performed one last time, but the values will be tripled. Keep in mind though, you cannot perform her combo during ultimate, but if you proc her combo before ultimate and then cast it, then somehow, yeah, she can perform during it. Also, and this is pretty annoying, but if a boss like Rodan switches phases during her ultimate, it will immediately end it. Guess he's not a fan of idols. But yeah, to wrap things up, as you can see, Liino has a ton of healing built into her kit, she can increase the team's attack, and provides nature and electric amp. Overall, she's an extremely low maintenance character. Just pop her battle skill and trigger the combo whenever possible, and then when you need it the most to boost the team's damage, use her ultimate. I will say though, there are a few things to look out for. First of all, against some enemies like Raker Beast, or basically enemies with high frequency attacks, Liino during her stance can actually take a lot of damage. She can even die randomly. So for example, using links set on Feng Yi teams can be a decent way to work around this, by improving Liino's survivability. Who could have known her most rabid idol fans are ready to tear her apart? On the other hand, Arcane teams with her stopping ability can improve Liino's survivability by default, which is nice. Also, keep in mind, if we cast her combo and the enemy hits and she becomes interrupted, she actually leaves her stance. So yeah, whenever you see an enemy attacking, don't execute her combo, although to be honest, this will happen accidentally a lot of times. So it's a bit of an annoying problem she has to deal with, but with careful play, should be possible to just do her combo fine. Alright, let's talk about her build next. So, first things first, when it comes to ability leveling priority, focus first on maxing out her ultimate, since each level improves the nature and electric amp, even if the attack buff stays the same. Then, level the combo because of the usual benefit of reduced cooldown when maxed, although its priority is about the same as the skill. Also, don't worry about skill scaling attack buff to 10% at maximum level. The ultimate will always provide 10% attack anyway. Lastly, don't bother with her basics at all, unless you're some kind of a deranged idol fan. Okay, so let's talk about her gear loadouts. First, as a reminder, her healing scales from agility, and then her amp buff from ultimate scales with will stat. And this is the stat we want to obtain as much as possible on Liino. Pretty much her standard build will be utilizing the Eternal Shire Knight set, consisting of Shire Knight light armor, hands, and bracing slab, while the offset piece would be the Lynx slab. Remember, Shire Knight set triggers here because she provides the team with an amp buff, so that means they also gain plus 16% damage dealt. This build also assumes that you'll be casting in rotations a total of 4 Liino combos, and at least 625 SP will be spent, or basically 6 skills and 1 Liino skill will be casted. However, in some teams like with Arcane, you might want to replace Shire Knight bracing slab with auxiliary arm instead. Another alternative build could be with Lynx set, which focuses more on survivability, by equipping her with Eternal Shire Knight light armor as offset piece, and then using Lynx gauntlets T1 with 2 copies of Lynx slab. I do want to make it clear though, the trade-off using Lynx isn't that huge because it provides more will, which in return improves her amp boosting. So even without Shire Knight set active, Lynx set makes up for the damage difference by providing more will. There's also some teams where Liino will need a lot more energy, like when playing with Zaihi and Tongtong. So in that case, go for this double auxiliary arm build with Shire Knight set. Either way, all of these loadouts really depend for which team you're going for, so I'm just gonna leave you with this table of reference made by Datafield guys, so make sure to thank them in the comments for their hard work. Okay, moving over, let's quickly go through her weapon options. Without much surprise, her signature is obviously going to be her best in slot weapon, mainly because of how busted the passive is. Like, just by getting healed 4 times, 4 stacks of 5.6% attack will be granted, which totals to 22.4% attack increase for the healed unit. And we thought Thermite Cutter was good. Well, this is yet another strong buffing weapon. And when looking at this table here, assuming she's in Fengyi Perlica Arc-like team, it ends up better than her second best option, Golden Age, by about 15%, and that's considering the team DPS. Pretty substantial boost. Now granted, Golden Age, which can be obtained from the Battle Pass, and is almost identical to her signature, except for the passive, which is weaker of course, but you can eventually fully refine it. Just keep in mind, healing with Golden Age will be better, but the overall damage boosting will be a lot smaller. Now funnily enough, there's also Jet 2 Holiday, or simply Jet, which will be used by her as an offensive option. Who needs extra buffs for the team, when Liino herself can dish out extra 100k damage or so? It's fine, like, I'd say if you're already busy with trying to refine another weapon from Battle Pass, Jet can be a decent alternative option. Lastly, there's also Cohesive Traction, which is a 5-star polearm, and when fully refined, it doesn't fall too far behind the other weapons besides Signature. At the end of the day, my tip would be if you're not pulling for her Signature, then just slap on her whichever weapon you have available, and don't worry too much about maximizing the damage because she doesn't deal a lot of it anyway. She's a support character after all, and because of that, let's talk about who she can actually support. So, Liino is the superstar for electric and nature teams. We already know that. But what kind of details do you need to look out for when adding her to those teams? Well, let's first start with Fengyi. This is a classic team comp which also includes Supervisor Perlica and Arclight. As I mentioned previously, the constant electrification application from Perlica and consumption from Fengyi leads to many combos Liino can cast and have her ultimate ready exactly when you need it the most. But make sure to check out everyone's gear loadout shown above. The most simple rotation could be like this one, where you apply Electric Infliction with Perlica, and then after Fengyi's final strike on it, both Fengyi's and Perlica's combo get triggered. On the other hand, a more complex version involves some fine-tuning, but this leads to some impressive damage gains. The goal here is to alternate between Perlica's and Fungi's combos to generate more Fungi skills and quickly fill up her ultimate, and also casting Fungi's skill only when Arklight's combo is ready to be triggered. So basically, timing depends on when Arklight's combo is ready, which is super often since her combo's cooldown is super short. All in all, Fungi teams benefit from Liino a lot. Like, I'm talking about some serious improvements. And no matter if you play the simpler or advanced rotation version, you will easily notice how strong Fungi is thanks to Liino now. By the way, you can also use Arcane instead of Arklight, and the rotation is quite simple, since all you gotta do is apply Infliction with Perlica, followed by Arcane's combo or ultimate, which can double it, and then when absorbing level 3 electrification, Fungi's skill will be able to do that basically entire fight. So it's a very effective way to play this team. Plus, Arcane and Fungi both on the same comp? Sign me up! Now, let's not forget there's another electric DPS, Avivenna. I know there's a couple of you out there at least who are enjoying this OG electric DPS. Anyway, with Avivenna, gameplay doesn't change too much if we already knew how to play her, and this team made up of Perlica, Gilberta, and Liino gets the job done very well. Once you accumulate at least 9 spears with Avivenna's combos, you can use the ultimate and skill when the enemy is staggered, provided of course the buffs coming from Gilberta and Liino's ultimates are also active. It's a pretty satisfying way to destroy enemies, and previously people used to run Akakuri, so using Liino instead of her will be quite noticeable, especially since it wasn't super important to have good SP generation, which Akakuri used to help with. Now, for the best girl, Arcane, there's a couple of things we gotta talk about. And starting with this team made up of Arcane, Zaihi, and Tongtong with Liino, the goal pretty much remains the same as before if you played Arcane. With this specific team, the goal is to achieve 4 stacks of corrosion by first accumulating 4 cryo inflictions on the enemy. Zaihi and Tongtong's skills will apply these inflictions, and then we just extend this corrosion by using Arcane's ultimate or skill. Now, the drawback in this team for Liino is that she will combo at most 2 times, which means she will need a lot more energy, which is crucial when we're setting up that big second hit from Arcane's ultimate. Again, you can see the gear loadout above, which shows you how to work around this problem. Lastly, if you don't have Tongtong, then you can use Snowshine, Estella, or even Last Rite. Their goal is to first of all just contribute those cryo stacks. Alternatively, you can use this team with Akakuri and Perlica instead. The goal remains the same. You want to achieve 4 stacks of corrosion by applying 4 stacks from Perlica's skill, and usually with 2 more infliction stacks, you can stagger the boss and activate Arcane's combo, and by then have Liino's and Akakuri's ultimates ready for when you cast the second ultimate from Arcane. Just remember, only cast Akakuri's ultimate right before Arcane's ultimate, so she can then consume the link buff from Akakuri. All in all, this is a perfect beginner team, and it dishes out a ton of damage. Lastly, and this is quite relevant, you can also just play Arcane teams and aim for 2 stacks of corrosion on the enemy instead of 4. This leads to more combos from Liino, which means her energy requirements drop down, and even though obviously this leads to losing damage compared to the 4 corrosion stack playstyle with Arcane, I believe this rotation is better suited against really short time trials, like the one from Echoes of War, which only gives you 1 minute to quickly defeat the enemy. So this can be a faster way to do this, instead of waiting until all 4 stacks are built up, at least based on my own experience. So, in the business of idols, they do expect to get paid eventually, right? I'm guessing Liino expects us this way to buy her potentials. Well, I don't know about that, but let's talk about them quickly anyway. Starting with P1, her stats, both from the skill and ultimate, gain extra 6% attack boost, so 16% total, which is nice. And then her first skill cast during combat returns that 25 SP, meaning she is SP neutral from now on, but it doesn't really matter that much. Next, her second potential gives her 20 will and 10% treatment efficiency, so better healing and helps a little with higher amp buff from ultimate. Then P3 improves her combo's damage and healing, which is not a huge deal. However, this potential also reduces her combo's cooldown by 1 more second, and in some teams, this won't matter, while in others, it can be a clutch moment to have it. But moving over to the fourth potential, which as usual reduces ultimate cost by 15%, and overall, it can be a decent way to use more gear with will stat by dropping gear with energy, but it heavily depends on which team she is utilized. Lastly, and this is where she makes the big bucks from you as an idol, the amp effect from the ultimate is increased by 20%, and this means it becomes even stronger the more will stat she has. But then again, you just spent so much cash by this point. What did you expect? Anyway, that will be the guide, and overall, Liino is definitely a superb support. Now, if only her flying actually worked like flying.